Well, good Tuesday afternoon to you from sunny Southern California. I am Dylan Ratigan, and we are thrilled to be out west, where we're about to launch our 30 Million Jobs Tour tomorrow in Silicon Valley. More details on that shortly, but we begin with the greedy bastard behavior that is behind the jobs crisis and the nightmare that is the U.S. housing market. And the Golden State, right out here, ground zero for both of these problems. Unemployment in California, some 3 points above the national average. And remember, this is a measurement that does not account for the underemployed. Well, good Tuesday afternoon to you from sunny Southern California. I am Dylan Ratigan, and we are thrilled to be out west, where we're about to launch our 30 Million Jobs Tour tomorrow in Silicon Valley. More details on that shortly, but we begin with the greedy bastard behavior that is behind the jobs crisis and the nightmare that is the U.S. housing market. And the Golden State, right out here, ground zero for both of these problems. Unemployment in California, some 3 points above the national average. And remember, this is a measurement that does not account for the underemployed and those who are no longer counted at all. Meanwhile, housing, well, it's simply no way to live. California, the third highest number of foreclosures in America, and they are expected to jump nationally. More foreclosures this year, not less, by 25%. But remember, this is not simply a foreclosure crisis. Even Americans who can't afford their mortgage payments are still stuck in their homes because they owe more than they can fetch for their properties. Home prices nationally have dropped by more than a third since the start of the crisis. Here in California, it's even worse, and any talk of a recovery, simply not true. In fact, prices in California have dropped another 6% in just the past year. So where's the leadership? And where, for that matter, are the handcuffs for those who continue to cheat the system with their greedy bastard behavior at the expense of the American homeowner? Joining us from San Diego today is John Taylor, president of the National Community Reinvestment Center, and from the Wharton Business School, real estate and finance professor Susan Wachter. And John, walk us through what you see as the greatest tragedy or harm that is being done as a result of the current situation.
Well, number one, yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Dylan. We are far from out of the woods by any stretch. The number of foreclosures that are going to continue to happen here in the state of California, where we're both located today, but nationwide, is going to continue to grow. There's estimates of somewhere around 10 million more foreclosures. The GAO just came out with a study that says there's already 10 million vacant and abandoned housing. I mean, all this undermines the housing industry, but it also undermines property values. You know, property values nationwide have continued to decline. Last year, nationwide, they went down 5.4%. Here in California, it's almost 6%. They went down after another year. So all that equity, all that lost value, and all that devaluation of property. You mentioned nationwide, properties are 1 in 5 are underwater. Here in California, it's 1 in 3. So unless we really deal with the foreclosures, the vacant properties, and so on, it's going to continue to promote unemployment, undermine our economy, really make it difficult for us to see any type of economic regeneration in this nation. So it's critical that we really address this.
Professor Wachter, there have been any variety of plans, national plans, state plans, municipal plans. Interested whether you can steer us to any of either the principles or actual plans that you've seen that you think could steer us into a room where you could move towards resolution.
Well, resolution is going to require that the fundamentals be on the right side, and it's possible that the overall economy's growth will bring us in this year to a bottoming and to the nascent recovery. That said, just as I agree with John, we are going to see, if anything, an increase in foreclosures, and the danger there is that we could have another vicious cycle, even if it's just for the short run, of prices falling, more underwater, more people foreclosing, and worse price geographically in states like California. That said, part of the solution will be rentership, and rentership is up, of course. There's increased demand for that. So we need to see some of these properties that are abandoned, REO, put into the hands of responsible people who will put them out into the rental market.
One thing that really strikes me, John, in addition to everything we've discussed, is we are in the 21st century, and one of the signatures of this time is adaptability, the ability to move, the ability to be entrepreneurial and create and pursue new ideas and new solutions. And I'm interested as to how big of a barrier forget whether you're being foreclosed on, and the next group of people that are simply unable to sell their house because it's worth less than what they paid for it. They can afford the mortgage, but how diminishing to the adaptive characteristics of our economy, which are so needed right now, is this sort of the housing trap right now?
Yeah, I actually think that's you're hitting on what is a major challenge for us in this country. The fact that there isn't, I mean, the fact that people are sitting in homes that are, forget if they're underwater. Let's say underwater just means your mortgage is greater than the value of the house. But let's say your mortgage has simply dropped $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. That's money that you would have used as a down payment for another house. It's money that you would have used to move. It's money that you would have used perhaps to start a business, send a child to college, for all the reasons that a lot of people would have to make home improvements. So there's so many businesses that are connected to the growth of equity in a home that have now disappeared. For people who are paying their mortgages, they're on time. They're simply sitting there as the economy continues, as home prices continue to decline. I mean, there's a lot of folks, and I'm one of them. I'd love to be able to sit here and tell you, I think we're about to turn the corner, but every time I get near the corner, I realize I'm far from the street where I need to turn. There just simply isn't we haven't hit the bottom on property values. Only 9 states out of the 50 realized any type of value increase in home ownership. So we're a long way from that, and until that begins to happen, we're just not going to build the equity that creates mobility, that creates equity possibilities for people to use that equity for other purposes and help stimulate all sorts of industries. So it has a contagion effect.
Yeah. Professor, as everybody knows by now, the American taxpayer at its peak put up, I guess, $30 trillion with a T to support the current banking apparatus. We've pushed trillions of dollars into that system on the belief and argument that doing so will facilitate more lending and perpetuate the potential growth for this economy. Why have we not seen more of a response in the actual Main Street economy, not just in housing, but around housing and the housing economy, in exchange for the trillions of dollars that have been asked of us as Americans to support the lenders?
Part of the problem is that while we had a huge decrease in lending standards that are part of the problem where we are today, we today have ratcheted up lending standards so that people who could get loans, and even in the 1990s, with slight blemish records, are unable to get loans, despite the fact that mortgages are at an all-time historical, affordable interest rate. Getting those mortgages is very difficult. That's part of our problem. And more generally, of course, there's consumer confidence issues. There's unemployment, employment is growing, but slowly. We need to turn that corner on consumer confidence, and we need to make people more able to buy when they want to buy.
Have either of you either seen or do you have in your heads a policy prescription? I'll start with you, Susan, that might help to accelerate resolving some of this?
Well, yes, there are no end, but what's required, first of all, is for the major lenders to themselves see the turning of this market, and perhaps some putting their feet to the fire to make it possible for that market to turn by lending conditions. That's sine qua non.
Yeah. John, the same question.
Yeah, Dylan, I'd add no more lending or supporting or even access to the Fed window for any banks who aren't, without the explicit requirement that if we're helping you, you're reinvesting in Americans. You're reinvesting in consumers and taxpayers and businesses. So we just got to make that part of the vernacular as the government gets engaged in keeping these banks afloat and keeping their coffers full of cash, that they're also reinvesting in America and America's cities and towns. The major thing also, Dylan, is we have got to deal with the foreclosure problem. And, you know, people have stopped, all Americans have stopped pointing fingers at each other. We all know what happened. This was a lending system that was unregulated, that was able to do a whole bunch of really bad things, make loans to people that shouldn't have been made or under terms and conditions that changed, that got a lot of people into trouble. All that's ancient history. We can continue to point fingers if we want, but what we really need to do is stabilize the housing industry and prevent these foreclosures from happening, make sure people get into the kinds of mortgages they should have gotten in the first place, which means principal reductions. If we don't consider principal reductions, I mean, all these folks on the water, all these folks who are, are looking at walking away from their home or just don't know what to do, that's not going to help our situation. So, and then deal with all the vacant and abandoned properties. HUD has a program, 203K it's called. There's a perfect opportunity for us to refinance all these mortgages out of the realm of facing foreclosure. So we got to deal with the foreclosures, deal with the vacant properties, and make sure we don't make money available to banks unless they're really reinvesting in neighborhoods and communities.
Well, listen, thank you both for giving us some insight today. I appreciate it. Susan Wachter out of Wharton and John Taylor, President and CEO of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. Thanks, guys. Moving forward here, make no mistake, the housing crisis is directly tied to the unemployment crisis in this country. For if you do not have a job, you cannot make your payments. Not to mention, one of the big reasons folks can't find work is because they can't sell their homes if they need to relocate for that new job. As you surely know by now, we're about to launch our 30 Million Jobs Tour tomorrow. From a true cradle of innovation, Silicon Valley, we will talk problems, yes, but more importantly, solutions to encourage investment in America and American people. And to connect the dots on housing and the banksters, head over to greedybastards.com for a sense of all the little ways that ultimately add up to a lack of investment in this country. And still ahead this hour, 50 states, one common cause: get money out. The latest group of Americans standing up to demand that we take at least corporate money out of D.C. Also ahead, only our resident skeptic